Beauty is defined as the quality present in all things that gives pleasure to the senses. Where most of the fine arts are concerned, beauty is interpreted through the visual senses. The word aesthetic refers to an awareness of beauty. Most people associate an aesthetic preference with the taste of the viewer. Different people find beauty in different things. Some people feel that there is actually a universal order of things that are more beautiful than others. This idea goes all the way back to the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato. He felt that for everything that exists in this world, there is a form or perfect version of that thing. All things, either man-made or natural, must be compared against their forms. The Venus de Milo is a representation of the Greek goddess of love. She is meant to embody the essence of feminine beauty and proportion. We hold this statue in high regard today because it still represents our cultural ideals of beauty that go back to the ancient Greeks. This sculpture used to have arms, but it has fallen apart over the last 2,000 years. If Plato were alive today, he may find it peculiar that we still admire the statue, even though a person with no arms does not represent the canon of perfect human proportions. Mark Quinn is a contemporary British artist who challenges these Platonic notions of beauty. This is an image of Quinn's large marble sculpture entitled Alison Lapper Pregnant. The statue was placed in a very prominent location in London's busy Trafalgar Square. Its subject, Alison Lapper, is a real-life woman who has a congenital condition called phocomelia. From this disorder, she was born with no arms and with truncated legs. Despite her adversity, she is an active artist, model, mother, and physical disabilities advocate. Quinn's monument to Lapper is indicative of a paradigm shift in our aesthetic sensibilities. It is a public-funded project that was displayed in a prominent public space. This challenges our notions of beauty by saying that somebody with a physical disability does not need to be hidden away and can even be celebrated in the same cultural arena as our most traditional icons of beauty. One of the biggest distinctions we make between artists is that of training. Most artists who we'll discuss in this class have been trained in the Western fine arts tradition. Individuals with little or no formal training in this tradition are often described as being either untrained or outsider artists. These untrained artists are referred to as outsiders because they exist outside of the conventional art world and its history. They often feel a need to create which has little or nothing to do with gaining the approval of others. Outsider artists usually are not interested in creating work to show in galleries or in museums. This untrained artist named Henry Darger lived a very solitary life. He did not have any close friends or family, and nobody was aware of the work that he was making. After his death, his small apartment was found cluttered with stacks of thousands of drawings depicting an epic battle between good and evil, featuring these young heroines, the Vivian sisters. Today, this work fetches large sums of money at galleries and on auction blocks. Stories like this pose interesting ethical questions about what to do with work that an artist did not intend to be seen. Is this exploitation, or is it just sharing somebody's unique vision with the world? Folk artists, on the other hand, do come from art-making traditions, albeit small ones. Many folk art traditions come from rural areas where communication and artistic influence has been limited to members of that region or community, sometimes for very long periods of time. In essence, folk artists practice a craft. This craft can be anything from weaving, to quilting, to potting, to painting. Generally, folk artists may be more willing than outsider artists to market their work and to share it with the public in venues such as galleries and museums. This quilt was made in rural Gee's Bend, Alabama by one of the African American craftswomen in that small town. This tradition has been passed down from mothers to daughters for many generations. Recently, the work of this group of folk artists was discovered by the greater fine arts community. A very popular exhibition of their work was staged and it toured nationally to many large museums. A trained artist, compared to an untrained or folk artist, is any individual who has studied the art of the Western fine arts tradition. This artist, Jean Dubuffet, was trained in the strict French academic style in the early 20th century. After gaining all of that knowledge of classical European aesthetics, he began painting in a style that seemed to emulate the aesthetics of an untrained artist. In his case, he was responding to the violence of the Second World War. In the aftermath of such destruction, it was difficult for him to rationalize making work that depicts traditional notions of beauty. He made work that was consciously ugly. Even the materials that he painted with, such as sand, dirt, and oil, were intended to add to the unattractive aesthetic of the work. The type of academy or school where Dubuffet studied was founded in France in the 17th century by the artist Nicolas Poussin. The first European academies of art, however, were formed in the 16th century by the Baroque painter Annibale Carracci and his brother Ludovico. At their school, young artists were taught how to make art based on the ideals set forth by European artists from Greek and Roman antiquity through the Italian Renaissance. Before the creation of the academies, if a young person wanted to become an artist, they first had to apprentice in the studio of an established or master artist. Such apprenticeships often involved helping the master create his own work. Once the apprentice logged enough time at the master's studio, they were deemed masters themselves, and were able to open their own studios. The tradition of the academy still exists today, and believe it or not, you are taking part in it. The academic tradition continues at our colleges and our universities. The difference is that here, art students aren't necessarily expected to learn how to paint or sculpt in the strict tradition of the old European academies. What today's schools do share with those of the past is an expectation to learn the histories and practices of the established traditions. To achieve this, art students in most college programs are expected to take courses in art history. Regardless of what type of work the students create, possessing this knowledge distinguishes them from untrained or folk artists, and it gives them the context to place themselves within a specific art historical lineage.